Have you ever noticed how the more someone awakens spiritually, the more they seem to drift away from human love? It's as if consciousness, once expanded, erases the desire to belong to someone. And at first glance, that sounds cruel, doesn't it? After all, we grew up believing that love is the pinnacle of life, the divine reward for existing. But what if the love we seek is actually an illusion carefully constructed by the ego? What if our constant need to love and be loved is merely a disguised way of escaping loneliness, inner truth, and the fear of facing the void? Nietzsche would say that romantic love is a dance between need and control, while unconditional love can only be born when the social mask falls and only authenticity remains, bare, free, without guarantees. And that's where the paradox begins. The more you free yourself, the more untouchable you become. After all, how can you love something that cannot be possessed? How can you surrender to someone who already lives in wholeness, in emotional freedom, without the craving for possession or need? What you're about to discover may shake everything you believe about love, self-knowledge, human relationships, and transcendence. Because the price of spiritual awakening is not the loss of love. It's realizing that you are love itself, and what comes next may change everything. Imagine that consciousness is like an old window, dusted over by years of beliefs, desires, and illusions. One day you open it, and light pours in. Suddenly, everything that once seemed solid begins to dissolve. Spiritual awakening is that silent rupture, seeing the world without the veil of narratives. But there's a price. The same gaze that perceives truth also destroys the illusions that once sustained love as we knew it. In everyday life, that price manifests subtly. Awakened people feel out of place in shallow conversations, uncomfortable with emotional games, unable to fit into dynamics of who gives more or who needs more. It's like being at a party and realizing the music everyone is dancing to is just noise. Romantic love, built on promises, need, and possession, feels like a poorly rehearsed play. Nietzsche, always uneasy with the ordinary, would say that love is the state in which man sees things much more as they are not. And Socrates, with a half-smile, would ask, then what is love, if not the desire to find in another what one has not found in oneself? The irony is cruel. We seek in others the very incompleteness within us, and when we awaken, that search loses its meaning. The ignorance here is believing that love is a meeting between lacks. The consequence is the suffering that comes when the other fails to fill the void that was never theirs to fill. The philosophical solution, according to Socrates, is meutic, turning inward, giving birth to oneself, discovering that true love is not found, but recognized as part of unity. We live in an era where love has become a performance. Likes have replaced glances. Touch has been traded for emojis. People share quotes about self-awareness, yet run from sitting in silence with themselves. And silence is the first sign of awakening consciousness. It's within it that the ego begins to crumble, and with it, the illusions about love. But don't be fooled. Awakening isn't a reward, it's a loss. You lose the anesthesia of ignorance, you lose the comfort of dependence, you lose the sweet lie that someone will come to complete you, and that loss hurts. Because it demands detachment, emotional freedom, and the courage to be alone, not as punishment, but as revelation. When Nietzsche said that becoming what one is the hardest destiny of man, he was speaking of this process. Spiritual awakening doesn't separate you from love, it separates you from the illusion of love. It reveals that loving without possession is the only love that sets you free. And in that discovery, true authenticity is born. And have you ever felt the weight and beauty of waking up to a world where love is no longer a need, but a presence? Imagine two people meeting. Smiles, glances, chemistry. It feels like the beginning of something real, almost sacred. But if we look closely, without the veil of passion, we'll see a silent theater. two characters, each performing with the mask they believe makes them more lovable. It's here that romantic love turns into illusion, and consciousness falls asleep under the disguise of enchantment. Everyday life is the perfect stage for this play. On social media, we cultivate idealized versions of ourselves, carefully edited profiles, smiles that hide exhaustion, phrases that sell wisdom without experience. And when someone falls in love with that image, we call it love. But what really happened was a pact. I'll believe in your illusion if you believe in mine. A trade of fantasies disguised as human connection. Nietzsche would mock this game, saying that love is the greatest of disguised selfishnesses. And Socrates, ever patient, would ask, are we loving the other, or just the feeling of being loved? The ignorance lies in confusing reflection with essence. The consequence is inevitable. When the reflection shatters, the enchantment fades. The philosophical solution is to look without filters, to love without projection, an exercise in authenticity and inner truth. There's something almost cruel in how the ego turns love into a mirror. We seek others to validate what we lack the courage to acknowledge within ourselves. We want to be seen as good, beautiful, interesting, because we secretly doubt it. And love then becomes an emotional bargain. I'll give you what you expect from me if you give me the version of you that makes me feel safe. That's not love. It's fear dressed as romance. Science also points to this self-deception. Studies on relationships show that the passion phase, that chemical frenzy, lasts, on average, 18 months. After that, the brain begins to see the other as they truly are, and what once was enchantment turns into irritation. The collapse of the ideal. What was once a soulmate becomes a difficult person. The illusion loses its shine. Only self-knowledge sustains what desire begins. But it's not a mistake to love. It's human. It's just that loving without awareness is like trying to see the sun through a cracked mirror. What reflects is fragment, not wholeness. When we awaken, we realize that true love needs no illusion. It is born from detachment, freedom, and the courage to look at another and say, I see you as you are, not as I need you to be. Deep down, spiritual awakening begins when we stop asking love to save us, because the love that saves is the same that sets us free, and that's why few can endure it. It doesn't promise happily ever after. It simply reveals what has always been there, two whole beings trying to share the infinite. And you? Have you realized how many times you've fallen in love with the idea of someone, not the real person? Answer in the comments. Think of a fogged mirror. For years we've looked at it believing we saw who we are, but all we've seen is the steam of conditioning, the distorted reflection of the social mask we built to be accepted. Spiritual awakening is the moment the mirror begins to clear. It's beautiful, but also terrifying. Because for the first time, we see what has always been there, without filters, without adornments, without illusion. In everyday life, this rupture is subtle but devastating. You start to notice the artificiality of conversations, the automatic smiles, the relationships built on convenience. What once felt normal now looks like acting. It's like watching a movie whose plot you already know. Nothing surprises you anymore. The awakening of consciousness pulls you out of the comfort of blindness and forces you to see even what you'd rather not see. Nietzsche would say that truth does not set man free, it makes him aware of his captivity. Socrates, with his sharp irony, would add, know thyself, and then you will see the world as it truly is. Ignorance is confusing appearance with essence. The consequence is the existential shock of realizing that almost everything around us, including our affections, was built to avoid the pain of clarity. The philosophical solution? Embrace pain as a teacher. Allow clarity to replace comfort. In the digital age, this phenomenon is evident. How many times have you scrolled through your feed and felt envy for lives you don't even know are real? How many times have you masked sadness with humor? Modern society has turned the ego into a product and love into emotional marketing. Everyone wants to be seen, but few want to be understood. Awakening breaks this cycle. It gives us back the power to be present, not as a character, but as a being. But there's an invisible cost, the loneliness of lucidity. When you see through illusions, the world becomes silent. Few can stand conversations about the essential. Many run from the gaze that sees too much. Spiritual awakening turns love into something so pure it becomes incomprehensible. People claim to want freedom, but when they meet someone truly free, they call them cold, indifferent, or difficult. The ego, desperate for control, tries to recreate the lost illusion. It seeks intense passions, dramas, breakups, anything that restores the taste of the familiar. But Socrates would remind us, no one does evil knowingly. The ego isn't the enemy, it's simply ignorant. It fears the void because it hasn't yet discovered that the void is fullness. What we call loneliness is, in truth, the first contact with unity. Breaking the illusion is dying before you die. It's allowing the old versions of yourself to dissolve in the fire of discernment. And in that fire, something new is born. Emotional freedom, authenticity, the ability to love without depending, to give without expecting in return. It's the rebirth of the soul, the transformation Nietzsche would call the alchemy of being. Imagine a cracked glass trying to hold water. No matter how much you fill it, it always leaks. Such is the heart that seeks love out of need. It fills itself with people, promises, passions, yet remains thirsty. The thirst isn't for another, it's for oneself. True spiritual awakening begins when we realize that the love we beg from others is the same love we've denied ourselves. We live in a time when loneliness is treated as a flaw. If you're alone, they say something's wrong, but Socrates would ask, wrong for whom? The culture of need disguises itself as romance. We're sold the idea that being whole is arrogance and dependence is affection. Yet every human relationship built on lack is a prison disguised as an embrace. To love, in this context, is to exchange velvet handcuffs. Nietzsche would write that one must still have chaos within to give birth to a dancing star. And Socrates would echo, the unexamined life is not worth living. Here lies the point. Ignorance is confusing love with escape. The consequence is the endless cycle of searching, breaking, and emptiness. The philosophical solution is integration, recognizing your own wholeness, and from it, overflowing. The modern world teaches the opposite. We are trained to compete, to prove our worth, to capture attention. The idea of being complete is seen as a threat. After all, those who are whole don't consume, don't beg, don't submit. That's why society needs incomplete hearts. They fuel the market, they click, they buy, they fall in love with reflections. The ego finds status in drama, but consciousness finds peace in silence. And then comes the shock. When someone awakens and becomes whole, love changes form. It ceases to be, you complete me, and becomes, I overflow with you. That's the point where most people get scared. Because love that doesn't need terrifies the ego that depends. Unconditional love is the end of the control game and the beginning of true freedom. Seneca said, no man is free who is a slave to his passions. When we understand this, we realize that true emotional freedom isn't isolation, but the ability to love without losing oneself. It's being able to say, I love you, without wanting to possess, without demanding reciprocity, without fearing departure. It's recognizing that the other is the mirror of your own inner truth. And here comes the Socratic climax. What if everything you believed about love was only a reflection of fear? What if the void you feel was never about the other, but about the part of yourself you abandoned? What if true love isn't an encounter, but a remembrance? The remembrance that you already are everything you've been searching for. Think about it. The day you stop needing is the day you start truly loving. And you, do you have the courage to be whole, even if it scares those still living in halves? Answer in the comments. If this reflection is provoking you, like this video and subscribe to continue this philosophical dialogue. Comment: wisdom is power. Think about how we talk about love. My boyfriend, my wife, my partner. The very language exposes the addiction to possession, as if loving meant owning. But love born of consciousness knows no ownership. It's an open field, not a fence. Spiritual awakening tears apart the invisible contract of possession, leaving only love as flow, not domination. In everyday life, that sounds almost impossible. We want the other to stay, to promise, to belong. We fear losing what was never ours. That's how most people live, balancing between the desire for freedom and the terror of being free. People say, "I want someone to love me unconditionally." But what they truly want is someone who stays out of convenience. That paradox is the root of our emotional captivity. Nietzsche would provoke, "He who possesses must be possessed." And that is how love becomes mutual servitude. Socrates, with a calm gaze, would question, if love is freedom, why do we treat it like a contract? Ignorance is believing that safety and control are the same as love. The consequence is fear. Fear of losing, of being replaced, of not being enough. The philosophical solution is detachment, to love another as one loves the wind, present, necessary, yet untamable. In the age of social media, this control has taken a new form. Last seen. Did you like my photo? Who were you with? These have become new digital shackles. Technology, which should expand freedom, has become a tool of emotional surveillance. It is the panopticon of affection, everyone watching, no one trusting. And love, when observed too much, suffocates under the anxiety of having to exist. But emotional freedom is not indifference. It is maturity. It's loving someone without turning them into a mirror of your own insecurity. It's allowing the other to change, grow, or drift away without that destroying your center. Only a being who has reached wholeness can love this way, because they don't need another to feel complete. Love becomes communion, not capture. Plato said that to love is to wish for the other to exist in freedom, and perhaps that's the most beautiful definition. To love is not to cage. It's to open the door and trust the bird will return, not out of fear, but affection. Only those who know their own worth can offer love without chains. The ego seeks control. Consciousness seeks sharing. Deep down, love without possession is the first step toward transcendence. It's the moment we realize that the other is a universe, not an extension of ourselves. To love is to recognize the divine in difference and to let it exist. That's why awakening consciousness frees us, yet also isolates us. Few understand love that asks for nothing in return. And can you love someone without wanting to control them? Or do you still mistake security for imprisonment? Answer in the comments. Ordinary love is made of invisible hooks. Hooks of expectation, fear, and exchange. We give affection expecting it back, offer care expecting permanence. But unconditional love, the one born of spiritual awakening, needs none of that. It's like the sun. It doesn't choose upon whom to shine. It simply exists, silent, constant, free, and it is precisely because it's free that it frightens. In daily life, love without hooks seems impossible. We live in a culture that measures affection by the intensity of possession. If you don't suffer for me, you don't love me, they say, as if true love required drama to be real. Socrates, alive today, might ask, is it love or attachment in disguise? And Nietzsche would smile with irony. To love is to suffer, say the fools. I say, suffering is resisting love. Ignorance lies in confusing love with dependency. The consequence is exhaustion. When the other fails to meet our projections, the soul collapses. The philosophical solution is simple, but demands courage, detachment. Loving without expecting anything in return isn't weakness, it's liberation. It's loving because love itself is a state of being, not a transaction. See the modern paradox. Everyone claims to want freedom, Yet few can handle being loved by someone free. A love without jealousy, demands, or guarantees seems like indifference. The ego needs hooks to feel important. Consciousness, on the other hand, loves without holding. It understands that love is movement, not possession. That love grows when given space and rots when chained. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies show that relationships based on anxious attachment have high levels of cortisol, the stress hormone. Meanwhile, relationships grounded in trust and autonomy release oxytocin, the hormone of genuine connection. Love with hooks causes exhaustion. Free love brings fulfillment, what Nietzsche would call living in lightness, and Socrates would call living in truth. But there's a loneliness in this mature love, because it doesn't promise, dramatize, or manipulate. It offers presence, not dependence, and most people still trapped in romantic illusions don't know what to do with that. The absence of hooks is mistaken for coldness. Yet it's the opposite. It's love in its purest form, without fear, without masks, without guarantees, only authenticity. When love ceases to be a need, it becomes a state of consciousness. And then everything changes. You no longer love someone to be happy. You love because you already are. Love without hooks doesn't seek to fill. It overflows. It's the peak of self-knowledge, the point where the I and the other cease to be two. Love then becomes the very act of existence. Imagine the universe laughing, not mockingly, but wisely, laughing at our frantic search for something that has always been within us. That's the essence of the cosmic joke. Man spends his whole life searching for love, when love has always been his very nature. Spiritual awakening is when you hear that laughter and realize that life, at its core, is a divine play where everyone is acting out roles they've forgotten are just roles. In daily life, this joke reveals itself in small ironies. The person who swears they've found their other half, only to lose themselves trying to keep it. The seeker who hunts for masters, books and gurus, until realizing the master was always the inner silence. It's the same with love. The more you chase it outside, the further it slips away. Because love isn't a prize to be won, it's a state of consciousness that blooms when the search ends. Nietzsche said, "Man suffers because he takes life too seriously." And Socrates, between laughs, would add, "The wise man knows he knows nothing, and that's why he loves all that is." Ignorance lies in seeking outside what is born within. The consequence is despair, the endless race after an unattainable ideal. The philosophical solution is cosmic laughter, to laugh at yourself, laugh at the ego, laugh at the illusion, because only those who laugh at their own drama are free from it. We live in a time where love has become a product and self-knowledge a trend. We seek soulmates on apps and purpose in podcasts. But the cosmic joke is this: the more we try to find meaning, the more we forget to simply live. The awakened consciousness doesn't seek control. It flows like a river that never asks where it's going. And it's in that flow that true love is born, without goal, without destination, pure movement. The ego hates this lightness. It needs plot, conflict, tragedy. It wants to know who wins, who loses, who stays. But unconditional love has no script. It's both the stage and the actor. It observes human drama with compassion, knowing that everything is just a dream within a dream. Awakened love is not blind. It sees everything and forgives everything, because it understands that even error is an expression of unity. And there's something deeply human in that divine laughter. It isn't disdain, it's tenderness. It's the compassion of one who knows that all pain is sacred, that even mistakes are part of transformation, that even jealousy, longing, and loss are ways for love to recognize itself in different mirrors. In the end, every search is remembrance, remembering that we've always been what we were looking for. The awakening of consciousness is therefore the conclusion of this cosmic comedy, discovering that love isn't found, it's recognized. That the other was never other, they've always been you in a different form, that the entire universe is one great mirror, and every human relationship is an invitation to laugh with God, not at Him. Think of two rivers flowing side by side. They don't cling to each other, they don't compete for space. They simply flow together, fluid, silent, sharing the same direction without needing to hold on. That's what love looks like when it awakens. It's no longer a relationship in the ordinary sense, but communion, a meeting of whole presences, without demands, without roles, without masks. A space where the we doesn't erase the I, but expands it. In everyday life, this kind of love is rare because it requires deep self-knowledge. People crave security, routine, control. They want to know, what are we? Where is this going? But true communion doesn't need labels. It simply is, moment by moment. Socrates would say, truth is not in words, but in the silence they leave behind. And Nietzsche would add, maturity is to rediscover the seriousness with which one played as a child. Mature love is that sacred play, free, light, and profoundly real. Ignorance lies in confusing communion with symbiosis. The consequence is the dissolution of individuality. A person loses themselves in another and calls it love. The philosophical solution is to understand that awakened love is made of unity, not fusion. It is being together without losing your center. It is sharing silence without needing to fill it. It is accepting that the other didn't come to complete you, but to mirror your own wholeness. In times of hurry and digital longing, this kind of love seems utopian. People measure affection by response times and updated statuses. They confuse presence with availability. True communion is not constant contact, it's resonance. It's knowing that even in distance there's connection. Romantic love seeks physical proximity. Awakened love seeks alignment of souls. And there's beauty in that, because free love fears neither time nor absence. It knows that freedom is the true bond. It's love that doesn't need to hold on because it trusts. It's love that understands the other isn't a refuge, but an extension. The meeting of two whole souls doesn't create dependence. It creates expansion. It's what the ancients called divine eros, love that elevates, not imprisons. Epictetus said, wish things to happen as they do happen, and your life will flow serenely. Awakened love lives that way. It doesn't despair over the future, doesn't cling to the past. It's here, now. When two consciousnesses meet in that state, there is no drama, no control, no fear. There is only wholeness. The relationship dissolves into something greater, the awareness that everything is relationship, even the silence between two breaths. Communion is the pinnacle of transcendent love. It's when to love and to be are no longer two distinct verbs. It's when the soul understands that every attempt to define love is to diminish it. And at that point, silence becomes the most beautiful way to say, I love you. And you, have you ever experienced being with someone without needing promises, labels, or time? There's a vast difference between being alone and feeling alone. Loneliness is the fear of the void. Being alone is communion with it. When spiritual awakening happens, solitude stops being a wound and becomes a mirror, the purest reflection of self-knowledge. Because it's in the silence of absence that we first hear our own voice without interference. The awakened person doesn't run from solitude. He welcomes it as if embracing his own center. In the modern world, that sounds almost heretical. We live surrounded by distractions, notifications, messages, constant noise. We flee from silence as if afraid of the dark. Technology keeps us connected to everything except ourselves. Socrates would ask, how can a man know the world if he has never known himself? And Nietzsche, with his sharp tone, would say, he who looks too much outward forgets that the abyss is also within. Solitude is the portal between these two worlds, the visible and the invisible. Ignorance lies in believing that loneliness is failure. The consequence is living surrounded by people and still feeling the emptiness scream inside. The philosophical solution is the return, to turn inward with courage and discover that the void is simply the space of consciousness expanding. When we stop trying to fill the silence, it transforms into music, the melody of unity. Everyday life proves this. Observe those who can't stand a weekend alone, who change relationships as easily as changing clothes just to avoid facing the mirror. These souls still seek love as anesthesia, not as revelation. The awakening of consciousness changes everything. Presence ceases to be neediness and becomes a state. Company stops being an escape and becomes a choice. Nietzsche spoke of the free spirit, the one who, even among crowds, remains alone. Not out of pride, but integrity. The awakened man doesn't seek crowds, he seeks communion. He is an ocean in the form of a wave. He relates without depending, observes without judging, loves without holding. And paradoxically, it's in this apparent distance that he becomes the most intimate of beings, for he loves the whole, not just the parts. Psychologically, mature solitude is a sign of individuation, the highest stage of the psyche, according to Carl Jung. It's when the human being integrates light and shadow, accepting themselves completely. What once was pain becomes fullness. What once was emptiness becomes emotional freedom. It's the moment we realize we were never truly alone, only unaware of the vastness that has always accompanied us. And so the paradox fulfills itself. The awakened one lives alone, but is never lonely. He is like the sun, present in everything, though no one can touch him. He loves all, yet belongs to none. He is free, yet profoundly connected. And in this apparent contradiction, he finds true totality, the union between silence and love, between being and nothingness. There is a subtle and irreversible moment when the search ends. The heart stops asking, the mind falls silent, and the being simply rests within itself. This is the moment when the seeker discovers the unthinkable. What he was searching for has always been here. The love he longed to find was already pulsing in every breath. Spiritual awakening is not the beginning of something new. It's the end of an ancient illusion. All our lives we've tried to reach something. Success, meaning, someone. But unconditional love cannot be reached. It reveals itself when the I that seeks disappears. Nietzsche would say, "Become who you are." Socrates would add, "To know oneself is to know the whole." Ignorance is believing we are fragments. The consequence is living in lack. The philosophical solution is to perceive unity, to see oneself as an inseparable part of existence. Love then ceases to be emotion and becomes perception. In everyday life, this understanding changes everything. Work ceases to be a burden, the other ceases to be a threat, loneliness ceases to be pain. Awakened consciousness sees beauty even in imperfection. It loves what is because it understands that everything is an expression of the same being. Losses are not punishments, they are returns. Arrivals are not miracles, they are remembrances. When the mind becomes still, the entire world breathes with you. But there is a paradox. Upon realizing it is love itself, the awakened being becomes invisible. People still trapped in illusion don't know how to handle someone who doesn't need to be loved in order to love. They mistake serenity for coldness, fullness for indifference. Yet it's within this silent love, without hooks, without drama, that the world finds its true refuge. This is the love of one who has transcended the fear of loss because they have already found themselves in the whole. Science approaches this truth without realizing it. Neuroscientific studies show that in deep meditative states, the brain reduces activity in the region associated with the separate self. It's as if the body confirms what philosophers have always known, that the I is a functional fiction, and behind it lies only consciousness, vast, limitless, eternal. This is the state in which love ceases to be a feeling and becomes a substance. Nietzsche would call this the radical affirmation of life. Socrates would call it wisdom. The mystic would call it enlightenment. The name doesn't matter. What matters is what you feel when all the questions cease. Fullness. What once seemed empty reveals itself as whole. What once seemed me and the other dissolves into totality. Love is not something you find, it's something you are. And so, the awakened soul cannot find love because it is love. And being love, there's nothing left to seek, no one to blame, nothing to prove. The game ends, and God's laughter echoes in the silence. Everything has always been perfect from the beginning. In the end, everything comes down to a simple yet radical choice: to keep chasing love as anesthesia, or to awaken to love as consciousness. The awakened soul discovers that true love is not an encounter but a remembrance, not a conquest but a recognition. Spiritual awakening doesn't steal love from you. It gives you back to yourself. And when you return to yourself, you realize the other was never absence but mirror, that loneliness was never punishment but invitation, that love was never meant to be possessed but lived, like a wind that passes and leaves behind the fragrance of eternity. Socrates would remind us, with his timeless serenity, the unexamined life is not worth living. But he might add, love not lived in consciousness is not love, it is fear. Nietzsche in turn would whisper with a laugh, eternal return is to love the moment, even the one that hurts. Awakened love is this, the absolute yes to existence. It is to look at chaos and still call it beautiful, to embrace the void and see that it gives you back infinity, to live without needing guarantees, because life itself has become enough. When man awakens, he does not become superior, only more human. He no longer seeks love, because he has become love. And it is in that simplicity, gentle, silent and free, that the soul finally finds rest. And you, have you ever thought that maybe the love you're searching for is just waiting for you to stop looking? Comment below what touched you the most in this dialogue. Your words might awaken another heart. If this journey made sense to you, subscribe and share this video with someone who needs to remember that true love begins within.